We all know that feeling. The moment when someone you care about, or perhaps even someone you don't know well, chooses to ignore you. It's sharp, it stings, and it can leave you questioning your place in the world. Why does it hurt so much when we're overlooked, when we're dismissed? Today, let's take a step back from the pain and look at something deeper. What if that hurt is not a sign of rejection, but rather an invitation? An invitation to stop seeking the approval of others and start recognizing the deeper truths about ourselves. When they ignore you, it hurts, yes, but perhaps it's not a punishment. Perhaps it's a sign that you are being asked to look inward, to reconnect with who you are beyond their gaze. Let's explore what this sign really means. The hurt of being ignored is something we all experience at some point in our lives. It stings in ways that feel so personal, so deeply felt. In those moments, it's easy to assume that the pain is a reflection of our inadequacy or our failure to connect. We may think that it means we're not worthy of attention, that something about us is broken, unseen, or unimportant. But what if the pain is not a sign of rejection, but rather an opportunity? An opportunity to step back and examine our own responses, our own feelings, and to explore what this pain is trying to teach us. When we are ignored, it creates a space where we are left alone with ourselves. The noise of others' opinions, the distractions of external validation all fade away. It is in this silence that we have the chance to hear something much deeper, the sound of our own inner voice. It's easy to look outside for approval, for recognition, but it is far more difficult to look within. Yet, in those moments of feeling dismissed or overlooked, the universe offers us a quiet invitation to turn inward. The pain we feel from being ignored often arises from the belief that we need others to validate our existence. We want to feel seen, heard, and appreciated. It's part of our human nature, and it can be comforting to know that others acknowledge our presence. But when that external validation disappears, it leaves us vulnerable. It forces us to confront the discomfort of not being seen, not being noticed. And this discomfort is not something to be avoided. It is a sign, a signal that we are being asked to re-examine our own sense of worth and to realize that it is not contingent upon anyone else's perception of us. This is where the real growth begins. In the face of rejection, we are given the rare chance to stop looking for validation outside of ourselves. The pain reveals our attachment to other people's approval. And through that revelation, we can begin to untangle our sense of identity from their gaze. The hurt we feel isn't meaningless. It's a signal to explore how much we've been relying on others for our sense of value. It's an opportunity to break free from the shackles of seeking constant affirmation. In moments of being ignored, we are offered the possibility of seeing ourselves for who we truly are, without the filter of others' opinions. The more we resist the urge to seek approval, the more we come into contact with our own authentic self. And in doing so, we can begin to shift our understanding of what it means to be seen. The pain of being ignored is not a reflection of our lack of worth, but an invitation to explore a deeper understanding of who we are. It's a reminder that in the end, the most important validation comes not from others, but from within. Our value is often measured by how much attention and recognition we receive from others. We live in a world that thrives on social connections, feedback, and acknowledgement. From the time we are children, we are taught to seek approval from parents, teachers, and peers. As we grow older, that same need for validation extends into every area of our lives, in our careers, in our friendships, in our relationships, and even in our social media interaction. It's almost as if we are constantly measuring our worth by the number of people who notice us. the amount of praise we receive, and the recognition we earn. But the truth is that our value as human beings is not defined by how others see us, or whether they acknowledge us at all. The external world can be a fickle and unreliable measure of worth. We may seek attention from people who don't even truly understand us, or who may not have the capacity to see us fully. People's perspectives are shaped by their own biases, their own experiences, and their own limitations, which means that the recognition we receive from others can often be a poor reflection of our true essence. Yet we continue to tie our self-worth to the opinions of others, relying on their praise, approval, or attention to affirm our place in the world. But what happens when that recognition is absent? What happens when we are ignored, overlooked, or dismissed? The pain we feel in those moments is not an indication of our lack of worth, but a signal that we have become too attached to the external for validation. When others fail to acknowledge us, we might feel invisible, unimportant, or unworthy. But in truth, that is not the case. Our worth does not diminish simply because someone has chosen not to pay attention to us. In fact, the absence of external validation is an opportunity to realize that our value is inherent and independent of the approval of others. We are worthy because we exist, because we have the capacity for thought, emotion, creativity, and connection. Our value comes from the simple fact that we are human beings, with our own unique experiences, perspectives, and potential. It's easy to forget this when we're constantly seeking affirmation from the outside world, but it's essential to remember that the recognition of others is not what determines who we are or what we're capable of. The moment we let go of this dependence on others for validation, we begin to unlock our true potential, a potential that has always existed within us, waiting to be realized. When we start to internalize our worth, we become more resilient to the judgments of others. We no longer need to seek their approval to feel complete. This shift in perspective allows us to act from a place of authenticity, where our actions are driven by our own sense of purpose and self-understanding rather than the desire to impress or gain recognition. As we begin to value ourselves independently of what others think, we find a deeper sense of peace, contentment, and confidence that is not easily shaken by the external world. The truth is that we are worthy whether or not anyone else notices. And it is time to start living with the understanding that our worth is not up for negotiation. When we experience being ignored, it often feels like a loss, a kind of defeat. The silence, the absence of recognition can feel like an empty space that we're forced to confront. We might begin to question our worth or wonder why we are being overlooked. However, in that very moment, there lies an unexpected gift: the freedom from the need for validation. Without the constant pressure to be seen, we are given the rare opportunity to step away from the external noise and focus on what truly matters: ourselves. The absence of attention from others allows us to free ourselves from the constraints of seeking approval, to let go of the fear of judgment, and to finally be liberated from the need to conform to others' expectation. When the world is silent, when the applause fades away and the recognition is withheld, it creates a space for self-reflection, for quiet introspection. The need to seek attention from others dissolves, and we are given a chance to rediscover who we are without the pressure of others' expectations. It's almost as though we are being encouraged to look at ourselves with fresh eyes, to appreciate our own existence, and to recognize the value that comes from simply being. In the absence of external feedback, we become the sole source of validation. We are freed from the belief that our worth is contingent on others' approval. and we can begin to focus on our own inner compass, our own desires, and our own sense of purpose. This freedom from external validation is not something we often experience in our everyday lives. We are constantly surrounded by the opinions and judgments of others, from social media likes to the expectations placed on us by our family, friends, or colleagues. The need to be seen, to be acknowledged, can feel like an ongoing task that never ceases. But when we are ignored, the world temporarily stops asking for our attention, and we are free to explore what it means to simply exist without external pressure. In this space, we are no longer defined by others' perceptions of us. We no longer need to measure our worth by how much others acknowledge us. And for the first time in a long while, we are allowed to be simply and completely ourselves. This newfound freedom allows us to engage with life in a more authentic way. We begin to act and speak from a place of personal conviction rather than from the desire to gain approval or to fit in. When we stop seeking attention, we also stop performing for others. We can speak our truth, pursue our passions, and live in alignment with who we truly are, without being concerned with whether or not others are paying attention. In a way, being ignored becomes a powerful tool for self-liberation. It strips away the distractions and allows us to find peace in our own company. We no longer need the world to validate us, because we have already learned to validate ourselves. The silence and absence of attention, therefore, becomes a teacher, guiding us toward a more authentic and liberated version of ourselves. It's in these moments that we realize how much of our energy has been spent chasing external approval, and how little of it has been directed inward. When they ignore you, it's not a punishment. It's an invitation to step into the freedom of being unconditionally yourself. Being ignored offers us an unexpected yet powerful invitation, the invitation to embrace our authentic selves. When one is paying attention, when we are overlooked or ignored, there is an opportunity to step out of the performance we often put on and just be. We no longer need to perform for others, to act according to their judgments, or to follow the roles that society assigns to us. We are free to explore who we are beneath all the layers, beneath all the masks, and beneath all the things we've done to gain approval. The pressure to conform and meet the expectations of others can often obscure the truth of who we really are. We learn early on that in order to be loved, accepted, or valued, we must fit into certain boxes. Be kind, be successful, be agreeable, be likable. Over time, we start to mold ourselves to these external standards, gradually losing touch with our true nature. But when we are ignored, we are given a chance to shed those layers. In the absence of others' attention, we find ourselves without the need to live up to someone else's idea of who we should be. It is in this freedom, this emptiness, that we have the space to discover who we are when no one is watching. Without the need to conform, we can finally embrace the parts of ourselves that we may have hidden or repressed. The parts of us that don't quite fit in, that don't follow the norms, that may even seem strange or unconventional to others. Those are the parts that make us uniquely ourselves. When no one is paying attention, we are free to explore these parts without fear of judgment. The journey, we can embrace the full spectrum of our being, including the things we have been taught to suppress or overlook. This invitation to authenticity is not always comfortable. We may feel vulnerable, exposed, or unsure when we step out of the mold that we've been living in. But in those moments of discomfort lies the potential for profound growth. The more we let go of the need to please others or to live up to their expectations, the more we come into alignment with our true selves. We begin to realize that being authentic doesn't mean being perfect or flawless. It means embracing who we are in all our complexity, in all our imperfection, and finding peace in simply being. When we stop performing, we allow ourselves to experience life more fully, more deeply, and more honestly. Ultimately, being ignored presents us with the opportunity to reclaim our authenticity. We no longer have to seek external validation to feel worthy or to define our value. We can step into our true selves, unburdened by the need for others to see us in a certain light. It is in this space of freedom and authenticity that we discover a deeper connection with ourselves and ultimately with the world around us. And when we stop performing for the approval of others, we finally have the chance to live from a place of true alignment, one that is grounded in our own unique truth. When we begin to internalize our worth, we shift the focus of our lives from external validation to self-recognition. For much of our lives, we seek affirmation from others through praise, acknowledgement, or even the simple act of being noticed. These external sources of validation seem to offer reassurance that we are on the right path, that we matter, that we exist. But when that external validation is withheld, it can leave us feeling empty, disconnected, and unsure of our place in the world. The key to overcoming this uncertainty lies in learning to recognize our own worth, regardless of whether anyone else sees it. Internalizing our worth means that we stop relying on the opinions of others to define who we are. We begin to see ourselves as valuable not because of what others think of us, but because of the intrinsic qualities that make us unique. These qualities aren't tied to our accomplishments, our looks, or our social status. They exist simply because we are human beings, worthy of respect, dignity, and love. When we internalize this truth, we no longer need others to validate us in order to feel good about ourselves. Instead, we become the primary source of recognition and acceptance. This shift in perspective can be difficult, especially when we've spent so much of our lives looking to others for validation. It may take time to build the confidence to trust ourselves and our worth, but once we begin to embrace the idea that we are enough just as we are, we can start to live more authentically. We no longer have to measure ourselves against someone else's standards or seek their approval in order to feel valued. We are free to pursue our goals, express ourselves, and make choices based on what is true for us, not what we think others expect from us. Internalizing our worth doesn't mean becoming indifferent to the opinions of others. It simply means that we no longer let those opinions define us. We can still appreciate the feedback and recognition we receive from others, but we don't need it in order to feel whole. When we internalize our worth, we begin to live with a sense of security that comes from within. We no longer depend on external forces to validate our existence, and as a result, we are better able to navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life with resilience and grace. This sense of internal worth also allows us to set healthier boundaries. When we know our value, we are less likely to tolerate mistreatment or accept relationships that don't honor our worth. We begin to choose connections that are based on mutual respect and understanding, rather than the need for validation. We are no longer willing to settle for relationships or situations that make us feel small, unseen, or unappreciated. Instead, we seek environments where we can grow, thrive, and be recognized for who we truly are. As we internalize our worth, we stop chasing external recognition and begin to appreciate the quiet, inner validation that comes from knowing that we are enough. This transformation allows us to live with greater peace and contentment, as we are no longer at the mercy of others' opinions. We become the authority on our own lives, and in doing so, we unlock a deeper sense of fulfillment and joy that is independent of the approval of others. The pain of being ignored, while sharp and uncomfortable, often transforms into something far more meaningful over time. Initially, it feels like a wound, raw and exposed, but as we sit with that discomfort and allow ourselves to process it, we begin to understand it in a new light. What once seemed like a source of rejection begins to reveal itself as an opportunity for personal growth and self-discovery. The longer we experience the silence of being overlooked, the clearer it becomes that this pain is not something to avoid, but rather something to embrace as part of our journey. At first we might feel lost or abandoned when we are ignored, as if our value has been stripped away, but this feeling of loss, this sense of being cast aside, can be the catalyst for a deeper realization that our worth is not dependent on others. We are not defined by how much attention we receive or how many people acknowledge us. We are defined by our intrinsic qualities, by who we are at the core, and by our ability to stand on our own, even in the face of indifference. It is in the moments when we feel ignored that we are given the opportunity to rediscover this truth, that we are whole and complete, with or without external validation. As we sit with the pain, as we allow it to settle within us, we begin to see it for what it truly is, a signal that we have become too reliant on the approval of others. It calls us to re-examine our motivations and to realign our focus. Are we living for the recognition of others, or are we living for our own sense of fulfillment and purpose? The longer we experience the pain of being ignored, the more we realize that it is not the approval of others that will bring us peace, but rather our own internal sense of worth. Over time, this realization becomes less theoretical and more deeply felt, as we shift from seeking external affirmation to finding peace in our own self-recognition. The pain also transforms as we learn to embrace it rather than resist it. When we resist pain, when we fight against the discomfort, we prolong our suffering. But when we allow the pain to be present, when we accept it as part of our experience, we begin to find that it softens. The intensity of the hurt gradually diminishes as we stop giving it so much power over us. The pain becomes less about the people who are ignoring us and more about our own ability to cope with and grow through difficult emotions. It teaches us resilience, patience, and the power of letting go. As time passes, we become more comfortable with the silence, and we no longer feel the need to fill it with the approval of others. The quiet becomes a space where we can hear our own thoughts, our own desires, and our own truths. The more we allow ourselves to be in this space of solitude, the more we discover about who we are when no one else is watching. The pain of being ignored, once a source of suffering, becomes a tool for transformation, leading us to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. In the end, the experience of being ignored, while painful, holds within it the seeds of growth, self-discovery, and liberation. It is not a sign of our inadequacy, but an invitation to look within, to redefine our worth, and to embrace who we are beyond the gaze of others. The hurt we feel is a powerful reminder that we often tie our sense of self to external validation. And in those moments of being overlooked, we are given the chance to break free from that dependence. Through this process, we learn to value ourselves, to recognize our worth, and to find strength in our own presence. We realize that we do not need the approval of others to feel complete or to live authentically. In the silence, we find freedom, and in that freedom, we rediscover our true selves. The pain may still come, but it transforms from something that diminishes us into something that empowers us. Being ignored is not a reflection of our lack of worth. It is a sign, a moment of awakening, a call to embrace our own power and authenticity. And when we do, we are no longer defined by the world's gaze, but by our own inner truth.